Hello, Marvel Legends. Wow. Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. Peter Parker and Norman Osborn. Le Spider et un Goblin Midori. I'm not really bilingual. But the Green Goblin and Spider-Man, one of comic books, one of literature's greatest rivalries. The consummate personification of evil in Green Goblin, and Spider-Man, the personification of very, very good. Saintly, I suppose. But over the histories of these two characters, the Green Goblin has really put Spider-Man through the ringer. More specifically, Norman Osborn has. In fact, I think it's safe to say Norman Osborn's been a bit of a dick. But what are the top 10 worst things that Norman Osborn has done? Number 10. In number 10, I'm going to go with torturing Peter Parker into trying to make him become his heir. Alright, that sounds a little convoluted because it was. Basically, when Norman Osborn came back to life in the late 90s, it seems like once he initially failed to kill Spider-Man, it was almost like he was at a bit of a loose end. He's like, well, what am I going to do with myself? And he thought, I know, what I actually need is an heir, an heir to my legacy. Because this was before Harry Osborn was retconned back into still being alive. Oh, that makes my brain hurt. But this is when, so Norman, he had lost Harry, Harry was dead, and he wanted someone to take on his legacy. And who better than his greatest enemy? Because what would be more satisfying than making your enemy the one thing he hates most? Him is what I was trying to say. It's basically your classic Batman Returns plot. You know, we're going to make him what he hates most. Us.
We must first turn him into what he hates the most. Namely us.
That was a terrible film, by the way. Fight me. Now then, what Norman did to go a little extra mile with the convolutedness was he put a hallucinogen in Peter Parker's toothpaste, and over time it kind of affected his brain and made him go a little caca for cuckoo puffs until Norman could kidnap him and torture him over several days, trying to make him reject the light and embrace the darkness. And it was a thing that happened. It was weird. It was an okay story, but on the whole, it's definitely a dick thing to do. Number 9. Chill. In at number 9, we're going to go far more recent now. We're going to go with Norman Osborn bonding with the Carnage symbiote, and not only that, but infecting his grandson with the Carnage symbiote. But not only that, but also murdering Flash Thompson. Let's take a little closer look at this. So Norman Osborn had lost his powers. He had lost the Green Goblin serum that was coursing through his veins, which was kind of a good and bad thing, because for him, he was no longer bonkers, which is almost more scary, because now he was just a scheming psychopath without any Goblin serum in him. But he craved the power. He wanted the ability to go one-on-one with Spider-Man again. So it just so happened that Cletus Cassidy was a little bit dead, and the Carnage symbiote was just kind of kicking around. So it was about time that someone gave it a new home. And who better than the crazy man himself, Norman Osborn. Thus, we got the Red Goblin. And my goodness, this was a character who he had a short run. The story was it was one arc. It was like a one and done story, but what a tale it was. This guy was terrifying. If you take everything that Carnage can do, but he's just an insane mad force of nature, and then add to that the spite and personal animosity that Norman Osborn had for Peter Parker, that is a vicious combination. So he went all out to try and destroy everyone in Peter's life, because unfortunately he was able to find out that Peter was Spider-Man. He had since forgotten, thanks to the whole brand new day, one more day thingamajig, but he kidnapped J. Jonah Jameson, who just kind of happened to accidentally let slip that Peter was Spider-Man. Well, he allowed Norman to join the dots, so things went to another level. And when they did, Peter required some help, so he got Flash Thompson, Agent Anti-Venom, to basically kind of tag in for him, because taking down the Red Goblin was going to be more than a one-man job. And ultimately, by the end of the story, the Red Goblin murders Flash Thompson. So he's defeated, but boy, the body count is high and rough, and that is a badass story for him to, you know, drag Spider-Man through the ringer. Number 8. For number 8, I have one that I don't have any action figures for, although I could have got Mary Jane, I suppose. What I don't have is a baby. Oh wait, I've got the Green Hulk baby now. Okay, I could have done a little action figure thing for this story because it was kidnapping and possibly killing, though I don't think he did, Peter and Mary Jane's baby. Yeah, this one was tough. Basically, Marvel were doing a complete about turn on everything the Clone Saga was all about. They were putting Peter back on top of Spider-Man, they were getting rid of Ben Reilly, and they were 86ing the Spider Baby. They did it in a roundabout kind of not too committal way. They had Mary Jane go into labour, and before she did, she was in a cafe eating, and we saw a suspicious looking lady put something in her food, and then she goes into labour. Then as soon as she gives birth, this same lady, now in a nurse's uniform, comes, takes the baby, and then Mary Jane is informed that it had died. Later on at the end of the story, guess who we see? The same lady delivering a package to Norman Osborn, and this was the big reveal. This was where we found out for the first time ever that Norman was back from the dead. And you know, it was a nice little reveal where she gave him the package and she's like, "Yeah, there you go, sir." And he's like, "Oh, please call me Norman. Norman Osborn." Dum dum dum. So that was actually a really good reveal, and they were planting seeds that we might see the baby again. They had a little scene where Kane was in Europe, like shaking people down, trying to find out what this package was. But ultimately, we did find out what a package was, and it wasn't what we wanted. Number 7. This brings me on to number 7, which is, oh, it pains me to even say it, but faking Aunt May's death with an actress. Yeah, that happened. So, Amazing Spider-Man 400, one of the most beautiful comic books ever written, in which Aunt May is you know, slowly dying of just, you know, natural old ladiness. And, you know, in her last few days, she opens up to Peter. She tells him that she always knew he was Spider-Man, and she gives him his blessing, and then she passes away at home. Oh, just get goosebumps talking about it. Yeah, guess what? That wasn't Aunt May. No, it was an actress, apparently. Yeah, Norman Osborn, in typical dick Norman Osborn move, kidnapped Aunt May and then hired an actress who was willing to get plastic surgery to look like Aunt May and then willing to die in the role. She felt it was her greatest role. Get out of here. This was one of the most awful ways of bringing back a character. So the most beautiful story in Spider-Man history, in my opinion, is actually really weird, where Peter's hugging and crying over an actress. But yeah, so Norman basically kidnapped Aunt May and then pretend killed her, because that would be worse than killing her. Huh. Anyway, that leads me to the package. So Peter was, you know, chasing after this package that Norman Osborn had, and he finds what he expects to be the baby, and lo and behold, it's his elderly aunt. I think we all lost out on that one. Number 6. Number 6 is masterminding the entire Clone Saga. Yeah, whew, talk about retconning. This is something that they had to go way back with. The Clone Saga was a hefty beast that spiraled entirely out of all proportions, and that wasn't actually a bad thing for me. I enjoyed the Clone Saga. I'm the guy. Because at least in the Clone Saga, anything could happen. Like, all bets were off. Unfortunately, they had to end it somehow. And they thought, well, we have to have like a big reveal. We have to have something. We've killed off the Jackal, so what else could it be? And the answer was Norman Osborn. So there was actually a comic that came out called The Osborn Journal, which basically filled in for the readers how the hell this possibly happened. And basically, as soon as Osborn was dead, he disappeared, went to Europe, rebuilt his fortune, and masterminded the entire convoluted, ludicrous Clone Saga, which makes sense that that kind of plot could only come from the mind of an absolute lunatic. Number 5. Chill. You know the only thing more dangerous than the Green Goblin? Is Norman Osborn himself. That's right. One thing I really enjoyed when Osborn came back into the 616, when he revealed himself, he was back from the dead in the late 90s, was that it wasn't so much the Green Goblin who was Spider-Man's greatest enemy anymore. It was Norman Osborn. It was really cool. He basically became like a sort of a Lex Luthor type of, businessman, industrialist character. And that was how he would attack Spider-Man. And the best example of this, and one of the most dick moves, was when he became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., commander of the Thunderbolts, basically the #1 cop in all of America, with the entire military-industrial complex behind him, essentially ruling the world. What does he use all that power for? To get even with Spider-Man. This dude is Tom Petty, and I love it. So Norman Osborn is like, wait a minute, I've got my attack dogs, I've got the Thunderbolts, so I'm gonna sick not even anti-venom, I'm sorry, I'm going to sick Venom and all the other Thunderbolts on Spider-Man. He frames him, because of course you got to do things by the book. You can't just go attacking private citizens, even costume superheroes, even though this is post-Civil War, so maybe you could. Either way, he frames Spider-Man for murder, and he's like, well, I guess it's our job to take him in. What a patriot that Norman is. What a dick. Number 4. Speaking of Norman Osborn coming back and wreaking havoc in Peter's life, there was that small time where he blackmailed J. Jonah Jameson, bought the Daily Bugle, then framed Spider-Man for murder again. Which harkens me back to another point. We need a Paste Pot Pete / Trapster action figure, because that's what he did. He paid off the Trapster to murder a guy by asphyxiating him with his paste stuff, and of course making it look like Spider-Man's webbing. Lo and behold, Spider-Man is wanted for murder, which wouldn't be too bad except for the fact that Norman puts a $5 million bounty on his head. So everyone comes out of the woodwork to take down Peter Parker, and that's an interesting little variation on the theme, is what I'm trying to say, is because really there's nothing to have stopped Norman from just putting on, here it is, putting on the more modern Goblin gear and just going back after Peter again. I mean, it's his MO, it's what he does. But this is kind of new and improved for the late 90s Norman, and he's like, no, I'm gonna go full Lex Luthor route here. I'm gonna get other people to do this because it's more satisfying to sit back and watch as Peter gets dragged through the ringer again. So there's a fantastic story I really love and we need the action figures for, which is Identity Crisis, where Spider-Man is public enemy #1. So Peter decides to adopt 4 new identities in order to keep fighting crime without having to do time. So we have, I shouldn't have started this because I'm not going to remember them all. There's Dusk, there's Ricochet, there's Prodigy, and Hornet. Boom! Got them. None of whom, I believe, have Marvel Legends figures, but I would love to have that team, because eventually those costumes were inhabited by other people. They became a group called the Slingers. Didn't stick around for long, but hey, it's not like Hasbro haven't made more obscure characters. Number 3. All right, 3, 2, and 1. You know what? I'm kind of going to speed through these a little bit because we know them well. They're iconic, so much so, which is why they have to go at the top. But come on, we don't need to rehash some of these too much, especially the last one. So number 3 is Norman Osborn. He revealed Peter Parker's identity. He was, I believe, stop me if I'm wrong, or at least pick me up in the comments, he was the first villain of Spider-Man's to reveal Spidey's identity to himself and be like, boom, you are Spider-Man. I know who you are now. I know what you're gonna say. Doc Ock got in there first with the unmasking, but he didn't believe it. So that doesn't count. Doc Ock physically unmasked Spider-Man, but he was like, nah, must be someone else. Whereas Norman was the first guy to rip off the mask and be like, ha ha, now you're in trouble. So that was, not so much a dick move as just like a real sort of like quintessential bad guy move. But also, not only that, he went the full hog, but he was going like, well, I guess it's just up to me to show you who I am now. And that changed the playing field entirely. That changed the whole dynamic between them. What a move. What a dick move. What a badass move. That was a power move. Number 2. And by virtue of this one being number 2, you will know what number 1 is before I even get to it. Number 2 is, of course, the death of Gwen Stacy. Oh, I read this issue for the first time just the other day, because I mean, it's one of those stories you know so well, you think like, well, there's no real point in reading it, because I know it so well, but I actually sat down, and being the actor that I am, I sort of performed it to myself, and whew, it's tough, because Gwen Stacy, man, she was a flower. Like the character, you know, she really was, you know, penciled, written, and portrayed to just be this saintly kind of angelic character, but not in an unlikable kind of way. What's unlikable is the fact that I can't really stand her up very well. But yeah, she was written to be just this perfect companion for Peter Parker. So when the Goblin kidnaps her, what's really kind of extra tragic about the story is it doesn't seem like it's going to be anything unusual. It's almost like Peter in the comic knows that he's in a comic, and he's like, well, my girlfriend's been kidnapped again, I better go fight the Goblin and get her back. And it's also kind of formulaic right until the end, even when the Goblin knocks Gwen off the bridge. And that's always a bone of contention. People are like, well, did the Goblin kill her, or did Spider-Man kill her by snapping her neck when he shot his web and caught her? The Goblin killed her. I mean, from someone who studied law, if you took that to court, it was the Goblin who endangered her life, all right? It was the Goblin who put her in that position. It was the Goblin who killed her, all right? That's cut and dry. So, Pete, you can stop being so guilty, all right? But that was just, you know, talk about dick moves? Yeah, I would think that's number one. Or is it? Number one. Number one dick move, which we're not going to dwell on, is Sin's Past, when Norman Osborn has sex and impregnates Gwen Stacy. Like, they have a thing. I'm not sure if that's a dick move by Osborn or by J.M. Straczynski, who wrote it, and the editors who allowed it to be a story, and everyone else who's written Spider-Man since and not retconned it. That's the amazing thing. This story is still canon. It's just mind-blowing. You know, long story short, because I'm sure you'd love to hear it. Yeah, just Norman seduces Gwen and bangs her on a table, and then she gets pregnant, and because the babies are like, they got Goblin formula in them, they get born really quickly, and they grow up super fast, and they come back and, you know, search out Peter Parker, and oh god, it's awful. And you know, the two Goblin Stacy twins have been like forgotten in time and history, and this story, it's almost annoying that it seems to have been forgotten as well, because that means it's not been retconned. It's still there, and it needs to go. So that's the number one dick move from Norman Osborn, and the number one dick move from Marvel for still letting this hang in the air like a bad fart. Guys, that was the top 10 worst things that Norman Osborn has ever done. If you like these top 10s, because I'm going to start doing a few more top 10s, I'm going to mix things up a little bit. Comment below, let me know. If you want to support the channel, then you can go to patreon.com/displaying model behavior, throw a few shekels my way. Or if you just want to join the 6-1 clicks, then click the like, share, and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell too, because that really helps the channel get pushed up in the algorithm, so you guys can all see when I post these videos. Anyway, thanks for joining us, folks, and until next time, keep displaying model behavior. Cheers.